I am so blessed to be able to bring Reverend Harriett Walden. She is a deep person. She's a friend of mine. I have known her for 20-some years. We reconnected recently, and I'm so thankful. I've known about her work. She's out there. The whole world, the whole Seattle area knows about her. She's on the Seattle Police Commission. I don't know how long she's been on that, but her big thing has been Mothers for Police Accountability. And I am also very, very blessed to know her from another angle because she was involved with Women of Wisdom, and her spiritual connections are very important. We all know what's happening. As Sweetwater said, this has to be spiritual. It can't be just this physical, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And Harriett, I'd like to introduce her because she is an incredible spiritual leader, as well as leader.
I want to thank you all for inviting me. Thank Chris. I was part of Women of Wisdom on the original board many, many years ago, and thank you for the opportunity. I always love being in places where it's a sacred space, and one of the things that women we do is that we consecrate the space. Actually, by having a period that she's talking about. So, you know, and then we become crones and we use the energy to heal the world in a different way. When we're done with our bleeding days, we do something else with the world. In fact, one of the speakers at the Women of Wisdom conference years ago was a lady that there was an herbalist. What's her name? And she.
Oh yes. Susan Weed.
Susan Weed, and one of the things that Susan Weed said, she said that the world would get changed and healed by menopausal women. Because she said that menopausal women put oatmeal on the table for 30 years, consistently. Every day, they did something every day. They washed the clothes, they put the food on the table, and now that that job was over, they have the world would get changed because you'll be using that energy that you've used for 30 years. Before it was 30 years inside, and now you send that energy out. And I always remember what Susan Weed said. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
You remember Susan saying that? And so that's what I see here. You know, I see menopausal women, and I see young women who's getting fresh starts, and I see us women out here just doing it. So. Anyway, again, my name is Reverend Harriett Walden. I'm from Sanford, Florida, and you've all heard of the word Sanford, Florida.
Oh, yeah.
Trayvon Martin. I was raised in Florida, and that's my friend Heather back there. Hi, Heather. Thank you. And I grew up in the bowels of segregation. I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, raised by my grandparents in Sanford, Florida. And my whole life was elderly. I didn't know all my grandmother's friends was elderly. I went to mow wigs by the time I was 5 years old, and most people go in their lifetime, you know, because we had to go visit the sick. So my grandmother taught me a couple things, and then I'll just go on from that. My grandmother taught me not to be a hater. My grandmother taught me the value of not hating. My grandmother's first husband got killed by some white people. And they said they killed him by mistake, but they couldn't wake him up. Say, wake up, wake up, wake up. You know, they couldn't wake him up. So one of the things that she taught me early on is that don't spend your life hating. She said if they knew better, they would do better. She said white people didn't know better. She said they didn't know no better. That's what she said. She said white people didn't know any better. You know, she said if they ever knew better, they would actually do better. And so that's how I've really walked in the world. Came to Seattle 40 years ago with little children and a husband. Still here, grown children and no husband. But I'm still doing the work. 25 years ago, I had an incident with my children. I was not at home. My kids got beat up by the Seattle police. And I was there, lucky that they did not get killed. A lot of communities, we know what has happened. There's you know, Mike Brown and all these other names that is along the line. And so after August 5th, 1990, became very apparent there was no organization in Seattle working with young people who had never been in trouble before. I called a few other places and it was no help for me. So at that time I started Mothers Against Police Harassment. And that's what it was. Everybody knew me then. It was Mothers Against Police Harassment because the kids were being harassed. Absolutely being harassed. They were made to take the position and putting guns to the head. And they got tired of being jacked all the time. The word was being jacked. They got tired of being jacked all the time. And in the process of that, we had an increase of crime. I mean, I always said that the dogs came up from LA with the guns and the drugs, and they called Seattle unprepared. A town like Seattle was too small to have all this stuff going on, but the community did not organize. It caught them by such surprise that people didn't organize rapidly. And so not only did you have the young children being encouraged to become gang members, we had lots and lots of children being killed. And this was black on black crime. I mean, and we have to talk about that. We have to be willing to stand up and say that we harm ourselves too. And be all right with that, and then get a dialogue about that. And that's the piece that we have to do for ourselves. Our white allies can't help with that. That's an internal issue that we have to work on ourselves and to work on that. One year it was 30 young people killed. 30. I mean, so I've been working on both sides of the spectrum. So we started Mothers Against Police Harassment, and then probably by 1996, we started getting calls from people about other things about the police, not harassment, about other things that really pointed us toward police accountability. We were the first group in America to use the word police accountability. When I hear it now, they even got a guy named Professor Sam Walker. He's at the Omaha, he's at the University of Omaha, retired now, and he has this whole police accountability stuff. I say, yeah, I just think that came from Seattle, and it came from, at that time, we were Mothers Against Police Harassment. So one of the things, people, I take a long view of history. 152 years ago, when Lincoln signed the Proclamation of Emancipation to set the Negroes free, I take a long view of history. We didn't win it yet, but we are definitely on the road. 100 years ago, there was the black codes. People were living, I was raised in segregation, but it were also places where people were being lynched all the time. I mean, and there was a book called We Charge Genocide. And the We Charge Genocide, it chronicles the violence against black people in this country from 1945 to 1951. They tried to go to the United Nations to say we charge genocide, and they were not allowed. The NAACP was forced to take the word human rights out of their work and to put civil rights in there. And see, civil rights is something that the government can give you and take it back, but human rights comes from the Creator. And so that's why you don't hardly, it's been all these years, and now you hear the NAACP and other people talk about human rights, but they were forced to take human rights out of their presentation. And part of the preamble of this paperwork that they tried to present to the United Nations said that the killing of the Negro was like the arm of the state, and the police officers actually got away with killing people. And not only that, you have people like George Zimmerman who just didn't like people. I mean, and they could just go up and kill people, and nobody was ever arrested, and nobody was ever charged with a crime. Prosecutors in this country very seldom will charge a white man for killing a black man. Very seldom. The James Byrd case in Texas, where the man was pulled behind the truck, it was such a grievous case that the prosecutor had to charge. So we're dealing with the prosecutors who won't charge. I mean, it's always been reasonable. It's always been enough evidence, like it was in the John T. Williams case, that the prosecutor should have charged that case. But the prosecutor don't charge because they know they have a hard time getting a conviction. So all this work that it continues to go on, In 1996, the police officers killed an old man named, elderly man. I should not use old now that I'm old. But elderly man named Bergith Mitchell. He had escaped being a statistic for 84 years, and he was having a bad day. You know, a lot of times people who live by themselves take too much medicine or they don't take enough medicine. They're not compliant. We all know uncompliant people, you know, it's like, yeah, I don't want to do it today. I'm not doing it today. And so he was paranoid. Police, somebody came to his apartment to help with something and he wouldn't let him in. And so they wound up calling the police. He wound up being shot on 24th and Jackson. And he's also the man that they had some money missing and somebody eventually put it back. It was a big scandal. But what we did, we went into action on that case because I was the second elderly person that had been killed by the Seattle Police Department since we had been around. And so what we did is that we organized. And we took elderly people with us, we organized, and it took us a year or two to get the crisis intervention team. And the CIT team was trained by people down in Oregon, came up to Seattle, and these people were trained to be called when a person was having a mental crisis, a mentally ill crisis. We can all have a crisis. We could go home today and our house is on fire. We got a mental ill crisis right there. I mean, the people who had at OSO, they had a mental ill crisis. That mountain came down. But people who have a mental ill crisis need to be able to live through that event. They need to have somebody who can understand right now that that crisis don't mean that they're going to stay that way. But with proper care, they can move through that event. And so we worked a long time on that. And the DOJ, when they came to town, one of the findings is that they memorialized the crisis intervention training as part of the training for the Seattle Police Department, and all of the officers will be trained, and the supervisor. That is direct work that came from us. And sometimes people say, well, what difference did you make? I said, well, you know, it's over time. It's over time, it's over time. And, you know, we signed the letter, Mother signed the letter with the ACLU to invite the Justice Department in. I mean, in 2010 was a bad year for the police department. I mean, it was several events, and the most, the paramount, the event that just caused a lot of concern and outrage was the shooting of John T. Williams, who was a woodcarver. And everybody know what happens on that case. And Ian Burke he quit his job. He's not decertified. In Washington State, the only way the officers can be decertified is he has to be caught lying. So he's working someplace else. That's what happens. We don't have a national decertification program yet. So anyway, as a result of that, part of the bargaining, part of the negotiation between the city and the DOJ, they set up the commission called the Community Police Commission, and I got appointed to one of those slots there, and continuing to do the work. But I come to this work through deep spirituality, and a lot of my friends in the room know that was knowing me long before I started Mothers. I was involved with, I started out at Unity many years ago, and I've had a long practice of spirituality. That's what keeps me doing the work, is as my spiritual practice. And so my work also is spiritual activism, social activism. And you know, I looked up social activism, and hardly any black people came up. And I'm saying we've been working for social activism ever since we came to America. We didn't just come here willingly. We were the stolen ones. I don't know nobody that was stolen that wants to be a slave. Okay? I don't know anybody stolen wants to be a slave. And I'm saying, well, Harriet Tubman's work was sacred activism. Mary McLeod Bethune's work was sacred activism. You know, I mean, Booker T was sacred activism. All these people who came before. So I said, I need to reclaim this word, and make sure that the history book reflects the African Americans, the Negroes who did this work. You know, Martin Luther King was sacred activism, okay? He gave his life for us. He loved us so much that he gave his life for us. You know, I mean, even Malcolm, on the 21st would be the 50th anniversary of Malcolm X being assassinated. You know, if you haven't seen Selma, go see it. I mean, you know, it absolutely tells you about the strength of the people the people who actually, pushed on this system to make democracy real. We pushed on the system. And Martin Luther King said, you gave us a bad check. The check is no good. That I have a dream speech have way more than being a dreamer. He was more than a dreamer. But I see myself as an urban mystic. I see myself, that's right, an urban mystic, willing to be prayerful, being all prayed up. One time I was at Unity Church and one of the pastors said, you gotta be prayed up. You know what happens when you're prayed up? You miss that accident. The car is coming your way and then you got creative say go another way. So a lot of reasons what happens when you be prayed up. I got a son who lives international and he's always calling his mama so he can be prayed up. He's getting on those airplanes going across the world. You need to be prayed up, okay? You need to be prayed up. You need to be praying for the pilot and all the other folks who getting on the airplane. That everybody get on the airplane and land safely, So anyway, I just started, I've done many things, and so it'll take forever for me to tell you about myself, but there's two things I want to tell you about. Actually, three things. Maybe it's four things. Who knows? I'm going to be a Baptist preacher. I'll be a Baptist preacher. My kids are all grown now, and I got 6 grandkids, and my grandkids said, why do you continue to do this work? I said, because it's not done yet. It's absolutely not done yet. And you want to see some changes in your lifetime. Martin Luther King did not live to see the changes that has been made. Is it perfect? No, it's not. Absolutely. We did not wake up in nirvana yet. We didn't wake up in nirvana. I did not. But I wake up every day with a sense of joy and knowing that my living is making a difference. And that I know every day that I am my ancestors' prayer. I am the better day that they prayed for. The people in my lineage knew that they would not live to see a better day. They lived in degradation. They didn't have no Gucci shoes. They didn't have no GPS. They didn't have any of that. And my favorite person in history is Sojourner Truth. She left bondage with a baby on her back. Okay, she said that she didn't want to be a slave no more. She asked the Lord to help her. The Lord told her what time to leave. She left bondage with the baby. And she looked up at the sky. It was getting dark. And she said, Lord, I don't have no place to go. And the Lord said, a vision of a house. She knocked on the door with some Quakers. And they say, we've been waiting on you. She went inside and they gave her some place to stay, and she cleaned and cooked for her stay. And then one morning she woke up and she said, my master is coming for me today. And that knock on the door, it was the former master. She says, Lord, I don't want to be a slave no more. And before she could go out to the door, he had got in his buggy and left. This is a true story. Sojourner Truth says she believed 100% in her intuition. She said she believed 100% in the voice of God. She said when the voice of God told her to move, she got up and moved. That's sacred activism to me, and to believe in that power of intuition. And so a couple of things. Last night I was at the Muffle Shoots. They honored African American. It was a Native American celebration of African American history, because it's a lot of black Indians. And he said that people have to choose sometime. And they wanted to understand that there's always been a relationship with black people and Native people. And we're being rolled out of history right now. So the Native people and African American people better figure out a way to work together. Other thing is that I do Mothers Justice Show. I love being on the show. Information on the table back there about Mothers Justice Show, and I'm an author. I got a book back there called the Repetition Journaling. I started this in 1989. I've been journaling with affirmations all of my life. And my book has my artwork in it. I am an artist. As women are, we're many things. Many facets of women. It's like, wow, aren't we cool? Aren't we cool? And my kids keep telling me, well, Mama, you need to plug yourself. I said, well, I was raised with my grandmother that says that, you have to be seen and not heard, okay? So me out here trying to give a commercial for myself don't always work. So I don't always do it well, but it's just a pleasure. And I also got some membership forms back there. Mothers is the all membership. We're all volunteers too. I've been doing this work for 25 years. And I've grown old doing this work. We used to be out there chasing the police, standing on the streets, watching the police, and then going up to give people our cards. It's amazing what 25 years will do for you. It gives you a quarter of a century of doing something. It makes you an expert at it. And that's why we do Mothers Justice Show. We want to keep the grassroots voice around across the country. Because professional people has taken over police accountability, we want to keep that grassroots voice alive. I interview people from Albuquerque and around the country and tell their story so that we can keep connected that way. So those are the ways that you can get involved with mothers. I am, as my friend Heather says, I'm one of these empaths, so I do get messages from the other side. I don't always put that out there. I'm not quite the ghost whisperer, and I'm not quite the, Long Island medium, but I do get, I get a lot of energy and messages. So I'm just empathic, psychic, spiritual, sacred, activist, urban mystic. Thank you.
In Seattle, we see our communities of color, especially African American families, being pushed out of the city. Displacement is an environmental issue. The farther people are pushed out, the farther they are away from their communities, from their jobs, from opportunities like education, from services, and that is an environmental issue. People don't make those connections, but communities of color are being pushed out, priced out, and displaced. This is happening not just in Seattle, but happening around the world. We see climate refugees being pushed out of their countries, pushed out of their communities. When you think about the Bangladesh factory collapse, those folks, those workers were there because their homes were flooded. They were in that factory and died because their homes were impacted by climate change. They died because that factory was an environmental hazard that was not even supposed to be there. We have to think about these things, and yet it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that people are dying overseas and here from health and economic stress, from having to survive from the trauma of racism and ageism and sexism and patriarchy. People are dying. People are fighting. And yet, seeing all your beautiful faces gives me hope too, that we are taking the streets, that we are taking action, that we are not going to give up, that people are not going to give up. That is what is going to move this rig out of here, out of the Arctic, out of nowhere, make it go away. It is people raising up their voices. I'm not here for Shell. I'm here for my family. I'm here for people I love. I don't give a damn about Shell and these multinational corporations. They can go to hell. I want you to think about, who are you here for? Who do you love? Who do you care for? Who are the people for Shell at all. We are not here for the port or the police. We are here for the people we love and the planet. And we're going to keep fighting until we die, until we are tired, until the next generation takes on. Because this movement isn't ending here. This is just a moment in a series of movements, and that we are going to see change, a just transition to a healthy green economy, one that reflects our values, one that raises up people, one that protects our planet and our communities, one that uplifts women, trans people, people of color, black people, brown people, immigrants, everybody. We are not going to stop. So again, remember, we are not here for show. We are here for our people. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a coming. Come on under. Let's give a round of applause for the relief crew. Come on under. All right, so we're going downhill and we've got a very heavy cart, so we're going to move kind of slowly. Keep moving. We will stop it. We will block it. We will stop it. We will block it. We will block it. We will stop it. We will stop it. We will stop it.